As we said at this hour, House Speaker Paul Ryan is crafting a bill that would press the pause button. The U.S. acceptance program of Syrian refugees, he wants it to stop for the moment. So, as the decibels grow louder, Geraldo Rivera is on the ground in Paris. Geraldo, thank you for joining us. The backlash here against Syrian immigrants is growing by the hour. We have the breaking news, too, of apparently some type of situation at the soccer stadium in Germany. As you watch the French mourn the horrific murders, how are they interpreting the changing tone and the changing news flow on migrants here in the U.S.?
My goodness, Liz, I think that there is so much in what you have just presented to us. Let me take it in pieces. First of all, I love Donald Trump. I was proud to be on Celebrity Apprentice with him every day for 6 weeks. But when he uses language like refugees pouring into the country, it is so far from the reality. I think there have been about 2,000 so far. The first group is supposed to be 10,000. You can't tell me that there aren't 10,000 women and children and old-timers that can easily be brought in, religious minorities. I think that to use that kind of inflammatory language doesn't do anybody any good. I find it distressing. I think the problem is tough enough that we should really focus on the reality and not these phantasmagorical rhetorical flourishes by a man who could very well be our next president. So I lament that. I think that it is a controversy. Another thing that I find very distressing is that Republican governors are leaning one way, Democratic governors leaning another. Is this going to be another bitter partisan issue? Is it really about refugees, or is it about, ginning up a base to win a primary election? I think that we have to be sober now. We have to be temperate now. We've got to be practical now. Of course, we aren't going to be letting in Sunni Muslim extremists or young men of fighting age, but there certainly are enough people, enough suffering going on in the region where we could do a little bit. Here in France, for example, as opposed to the 10,000 who are, slated to come in that first group in the United States, 800,000 have poured into Europe. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands are here in France, and no one knows who they are. But we can't overreact. I think that what we have to do is remember that the enemy is ISIS. We have to destroy ISIS where it lives in Syria and Iraq. We have to create safe zones for those refugees there so they're not flooding anywhere but staying home. I think that this is a problem that's not helped by rhetoric.
Well, I'll tell you something, Geraldo. It's stunning, at least to some, certainly, that you have the position, and it's a generous position, considering that one of the bombers was known to have been pulled out of the drink in the Aegean Sea as a refugee, and he was the one who went to the Stade de France, and we can show this guy's picture. It's some fake name, some fake passport, and he was able to strap bombs around himself and go to Stade de France, where your own daughter was. And when thank God for the heroic security guard, even though that guy had a ticket, the security guard didn't see something that he liked about him. He refused, so the guy blew himself up. Your daughter was in that stadium. Thank goodness she's okay. But explain to people how you can come to your stance right now, considering how close you came to that guy bombing the soccer stadium where your daughter was.
How about the take your shoes off rule? If you don't have to take your shoes off when you clear airline security, then you're okay in my book to be a refugee. That's people over the age of 70 and small children. How about starting with them and nursing mothers? There's an obvious, or Christian clerics, there's an obvious group of refugees that the United States could take in with really minimal danger posed. I think we have to be reasonable about it. Now, going to my daughter who I just left, we have had our trauma in our family, our emotional upheaval. It has been such a traumatic experience for us, far more severe, obviously, for the 500 family whose relatives were killed or injured on that barbaric night when those savages perpetrated mass murder. I just left her. We were going to go someplace else in Europe, so we said, okay, why don't we go to the Netherlands? Nothing has ever happened in Amsterdam. We'll go back to Amsterdam. We'll enjoy the weekend, and then we'll team up with the rest of the family. And then the Germany-Netherlands game gets canceled. And you were so correct to point out the eerie similarity. Francois Hollande at the French Germany game, now Germany-Netherlands, and Angela Merkel going to be at that game. game, these people know what they are doing. They are sowing not only death and destruction, but also terror. That is the way terrorists operate. They scare us. All of Europe now engaged. You mentioned how all of the European Union now vowing to help France. The concept of the European Union itself is being assailed by these terrorists. The whole notion of open borders between here and Brussels, I submit that border has proven more dangerous even than the Turkey-Greece border.
And France has invoked the European Union Mutual Defense Clause, which is similar to Article 5 in the NATO Union, where an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, and the rest of you have to defend. Right now, our markets are very tentative and shaky, Geraldo. The Dow is now down 23. Don't know if you know this, but it had been up more than 116 points. A lot of fears. We are at session lows right now. Geraldo Rivera, to you and your daughter, Godspeed, and thank you very much for joining us. And, you know, with your perspective that some people may not agree with, but everybody should remember we all came from somewhere, and it is something that is going to be a part of the massive front and center conversation here in the United States. Again, 31 governors now saying we don't want, and this is largely symbolic, by the way, folks, because they would have to sue the federal government to enact the border closures. And besides, if New York says bring them and New Jersey says don't, last we checked, there's a Holland Tunnel, there's a Lincoln Tunnel, there's a GW Bridge. Very difficult situation right now when it comes to the migrant story.